Hi, green lovers. It's time to start squash and, frankly, all summer vegetables in my garden. I've already got my tomatoes going, I've got my peppers going, but now it's time to start those vegetables that grow really, really quickly. And so you don't want to start them too early. And those are things like cucumbers and squashes and melons and gourds and that kind of thing. Those things, once they sprout, they grow really, really fast. However, given that the weather is still a little bit cool, some of those seeds do take a little while to sprout. So I'm going to be showing you a couple of things that I do for those larger seeds, especially the ones with the harder shells like the winter squashes, to get them to germinate a whole lot faster, and I will show you the results as well. So today is March 15th and I will show you how quickly I get these to germinate using 3 little additional techniques. Okay, so let me first show you what the seeds look like. Now, these are hybrid kabocha winter squash seeds that I got from Johnny's Seeds, and they're actually a great example. This is what the seed looks like. It's got a really, really hard shell, and it's a fairly large seed. And if you look at the seed itself, it's got 2 ends. There is the sharp end, and then there is the blunt end. Out of the sharp end is where the root comes from. The first thing that you're going to do is ever so gently, okay? I can't repeat that enough. With a nail clipper, you're going to clip off just the little tip. Now, all that you're trying to do at this point is weaken the seed. You're not trying to cut it so far that you actually damage the root, okay? So that's something that you got to pay attention to. Then what you're going to do is you're going to use a file. Now I've got this handy curved file, which actually works really well, but any file should do. And then you're going to take the rounder end and you're going to file around it just gently. Again, all you're doing is kind of roughing it up because you're trying to weaken the shell. That's about it. Now, the next step is I'm going to soak it in water for about 6 to 8 hours. So you just drop it in there. I'm going to complete the rest of these seeds and then I'm going to soak it in water, and I could leave it up to 8 hours, even overnight. Now I want about 3 plants, so I typically plant about 3 times that number because squash does fall prey to a lot of different types of pests, and even getting the seedlings to grow into good sturdy plants, some of them make it, some of them don't. So if I want 3 plants, I plant around 9 or 10 seeds. I also like planting them in a little bit larger containers because I am not going to be up potting these. These are going to go straight from these containers into my garden. So something like this or a red solo cup should be the right size for you to get it going and get it to a really nice size and be ready to transplant in your garden. Now you can also direct sow these seeds. I don't like to do that because I've got a lot of little creepy crawlies like roly-polies, etc. that love eating my squash, my young squash seedlings. So I like to get them started, get them to a good size, and it feels like they are less prone to pests when they're a good sturdy size. So that's what we're going to do. I'm also going to be growing blue Hubbard squash for the first time. A lot of people say that this is a really, really delicious squash and it grows and produces a lot of fruit. So I'm going to try this. My garden is full of squirrels and mice and other rodents that like to eat my squash. So I'm going to have to do something this year to protect my fruit. But, you know, it doesn't stop me from wanting to try new things every year. And the blue Hubbard squash, look at that, how gnarly that is. It looks awesome. Going to be growing that this year. Okay, so I'm all done prepping my seeds. Just a quick rundown of all that I'm growing. I've got this kabocha squash, which is a hybrid. I've got the blue Hubbard squash, rampicant squash. Gosh, I loved this one so much last year. It grew so large. This one is a spaghetti squash, delicata squash, one of the tastiest squashes I've ever grown. And this one is your good old Waltham butternut squash. I've also got some summer squash. Now, you know that the difference between summer squash and winter squash is not that you grow them in the summer and the winter. It's because these actually, the winter squash, store over winter, but you grow them at the same time. Now, this one here is the scalloped yellow squash. Gotta have those pretty scalloped squashes, at least one of them. And this one is a new one that I'm growing this year. It's called Golden Glory. I tend to prefer the yellow squashes. I don't know why. I like the taste a lot better. So I'm trying this one. This is a hybrid as well, hoping for some disease resistance. And this is one of my favorite squashes, summer squashes. This is Max's Gold. The color is absolutely brilliant, and of course yellow is one of my favorite colors. And this one is called Black Beauty. It's actually a really dark green, and it is an extremely common summer squash that most people grow. And this one over here with the stripes is called Cocozelle squash. So yep, gonna soak all of these in water, then gonna get them into their little containers. I'm gonna plant a couple of seeds, 1 to 2 seeds in each container, and the fittest will survive. Oh, and one more thing. I've got these Burpee's Best Hybrid Summer Squash. They are fresh seeds that I purchased this year, so the germination rate should be just fine with these. So one other piece of the experiment that I'm going to be doing is I am actually going to be planting these directly into soil in cups at the same time that I am getting all of these started with those 3 little techniques I just showed you. And let's see whether there's any difference at all in the time that this takes to start versus these other ones where I've given them hopefully a little bit of a head start. Hey folks, well, it's been exactly 5 days since I put those seeds into those little pots, and I also put some in paper towels to germinate them because I was not sure about the viability of some of those seeds. They're a little bit old. But let's take a look and see how they did. Now, first off, this is the Burpee's hybrid, the one that I did not file. And let's take a look. Seems like a little bit of germination starting to happen right there. Let's take a look at the others. So this one is the Golden Glory. Look at that, folks. Oh boy. This needs to be potted up really quickly. Look at the length of that root. So obviously this germinated much sooner than this one did. Let's take a look at some of the others. This one is the Blue Hubbard squash. Also, whoa, in fact, this one's a dud because the root broke off. So I've got to get these into containers as soon as possible. Whoa, the hybrid kabocha. Now this is a really hard seed, and in spite of that, look at that. It's germinated beautifully. Wow. All right, so I've got to go and pot these. This is a big disadvantage of the paper napkin method, is you have to pot them as soon as they start to produce those roots. Otherwise, something like this is going to happen where it's going to break off. So I got to take care of these ASAP. Okay, 2 whole days later, it's finally time to plant my Burpee's Best squash. So between 2 and 3 days, that's how long you would save pre-sprouting them. So it's time to plant these seeds. Now note that this is the root. So when you plant it, if you want to give them an easier time, plant it with the root facing downward. That way they don't have to search around to find which direction is down. But you know what? These things will find their way down, so this is not a mandatory step, but just, you want to give your seedlings an easier time. That's what you're trying to do. Be careful when you do this, though, because these roots, they're super delicate, and you don't want to break them. So it is April 1st, and it is just a little over 2 weeks since I started the experiment with my melons and my squash seeds. And I've got some interesting results to share with you. And frankly, one part of it, I was a little bit surprised myself. So I'm going to share all of that with you. So let's take a look at what happened over the past couple of weeks to my seedlings. By the way, folks, if you're enjoying my content so far, I sure would appreciate a big thumbs up. It really motivates me to create more content like this. And tell me what you'd like me to do more of, what you'd like me to try, what you'd like me to experiment with. I would love to do something that you feel is valuable to you. Thank you. Start with this tray to my far right. This is what I'm calling the triply tipped, because I used my 3 tips and I tip them. So I was trying to make a pun, never mind. Anyway, you get the idea. I did those three things to these seeds. And as you can see, lots of sprouting happening. One of the best ones that has been sprouting is the blue Hubbard squash. So there's been quite a lot of germination going on there. The spaghetti squash is doing well. Rampikent has started sprouting. This golden glory has actually been the best, I think, of all of them. So yeah, a decent amount of sprouting going on here. And this one here is the hybrid kabocha, which frankly took the longest to sprout, but I finally got one of them to sprout. So yeah, 15 days, and these are looking pretty good. Now let's move to the next tray. So this tray is what I'm calling my TT plus, or triply tipped plus. And the plus indicates that they were actually started in a paper napkin. Now what happened was I had extra seeds after I completed filling out these, and I said, you know what, rather than throw them away, I'm just going to try and start them in a paper napkin. And I was blown away by the fact that, number one, they germinated sooner than these guys, so I didn't expect that. I thought that the paper towel would just, let me know which seeds had germination versus which ones didn't, but they actually germinated faster and they sprouted faster and they are growing really well. Great germination. In fact, these over here that don't seem like they've germinated are actually dug in, and I did see that they were germinating. So pretty much 100% germination will happen in this tray, and that's pretty obvious because I only picked the seeds that were sprouting in the paper napkin. So conclusion between these two is that triply tipped is good, but triply tipped plus is better. Now let's move on to our control group over here, where we did absolutely nothing. We didn't triply tip them, we didn't do the paper napkin, and as you can see, nothing has happened. No germination whatsoever yet. Now, is it starting to germinate? I can see some disturbance starting to happen on the soil, and that usually means that there is some activity, but it has been really slow. Now over here, I've got what's called direct plus. You get the idea, right? So this is what I direct sowed here, but I also did the paper towel for this, and as you can see, I do have one seed that has just started to germinate. And one more over here is the dud department. These were old seeds that I didn't expect to germinate. They were over 5 years old, and as expected, no germination. There was one scallop squash that I did get to germinate. So something to keep in mind, squash and melon seeds probably won't last you more than about maybe 2-3 years. So use them up quickly. So final conclusion, folks, if you try those tips where you weaken the seed coat, it really helps the seeds germinate faster. And if you start them in a paper napkin, it gives them even a couple more days head start. Spring is here and my last frost date has just passed, and I am so excited to start getting stuff actually into the ground outside. I hope you're enjoying the gardening season so far, and until next time, live green and love your greens.